Okay. All right. I am pleased to have CBS Sports, Kieth Idec. What else do you do? What is your resume? Because I remember you from the Burger Record. You just keep moving up and up and up. I'm waiting to see you on ESPN. That's what I'm waiting to see, or just replacing Max Kellerman. That's what I really want to see.
Nah, no aspirations to replace Max, but appreciate the kind words, Ronnie. I work for BoxingScene.com. I'm the senior writer and columnist for BoxingScene.com, which is owned by Viacom CBS. And
Okay.
yeah, so, yep, I worked for the paper for a very long time until 2016, and now cover boxing exclusively for the website. Yep.
I still have the video of us doing a show in 2000 in a jazz club talking about Trinidad and Hopkins.
I had a full head of hair and a whole
Yes.
back then, you know?
Yes, me too. Me too. I found the archive. It was who's going to win, Trinidad or Hopkins? Wow.
Tell me I picked Hopkins.
You did. I picked Trinidad. You picked Hopkins.
That was a beatdown. Jeez.
Yes. And you know what? Before we get to that fight, that was the loud, because that was after 9/11. That was the loudest I've ever heard Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. Remember the fight started really, really late? Like
yes.
12:30, 12:45.
Yes. Oh, we lost connection. Oh, man. All right, let's see if you can get it back. Okay, you got it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And there was so much energy in the building because they had to come in and everything. It was really such an emotional night and obviously an unforgettable fight. You know, Bernard Hopkins, I mean, oof.
Yeah.
He laid it on Tito Trinidad that night, that's for sure.
He did. Now we got the fight. This is an event I've been looking forward to because of 2020 has been a mess and different sporting events have been canceled. This is an event I've really been looking forward to. Spence versus Garcia. What do you like about Spence first?
Well, you know, tomorrow night, obviously, Ron, is all about finding out where Errol Spence is at this point because of the car accident last year. He has not fought since then, so we don't know what's left of Errol Spence. Now, he assures us that he's the same tremendous, fierce fighter that he was before. And of course, he's going to tell us that. He's not going to tell us if there were any problems in camp or anything like that. I have no reason not to believe him, but seeing is believing. You know, you want to see it with your own two eyes, particularly against a really good fighter like Danny Garcia. I mean, this is not an easy fight, even before the car accident, and certainly not after. So he's got a real fight on his hands tomorrow night, and I think we're going to learn, you know, if Errol Spence has regained that form pre-accident.
Now, Garcia, you break down Garcia.
You know, Danny Garcia is an underrated fighter. He's got a resume. As you know, Ron, he's got some big wins on his resume. When he beat Lucas Matisse on the Floyd Mayweather-Canelo Alvarez undercard, think about how many people 7 years ago thought that he was going to get knocked out in that fight. And he beat Lucas Matisse, and he took his best shots, and he outpointed him, and he was rough and physical with a guy who was supposed to overpower him. That changed Danny Garcia's career, and obviously he's had some very good wins since then. He gets criticized a little bit for being, you know, people call him a cherry picker, and he's gotten some soft touches, you know, from Al Heyman, good paydays for relatively easy fights. But he's also fought everyone now that he's fighting. I mean, other than Terrence Crawford, he will have fought every welterweight of this era. And he has 2 losses on his record to, you know, a very close split decision loss to Keith Thurman in a fight that could have gone either way. You know, the Sean Porter fight, I thought that Sean Porter won that fight and deserved a unanimous decision win over Danny at that point. But Danny can punch.
Mm-hmm.
He can, you know, his knockout ratio doesn't really reflect how big of a puncher he is with his left hook and his right hand. And he's got amazing timing. You know, Sean Porter was telling me the other day, and Sean fought him 12 hard rounds against Danny. He said the thing you can't prepare for is his timing.
Yes.
He figures out how to time an opponent's rhythm and counter him off of that. And if Errol Spence stands and trades with Danny Garcia tomorrow night, as opposed to using his height and his length and his boxing ability to make it an easier fight, if he stands there and tries to bang it out with Danny Garcia, he's going to give Garcia opportunities to counter him and then the fight could be very different than a lot of people.
Yeah, and you're a boxing expert. I have the utmost respect for you. This is a question I've thought about all day to ask you. Danny Garcia reminds me of a fighter. Now, Danny Garcia is a smarter version, a little more fundamentally sound version of this fighter. Both Puerto Rican. They both were very good counterpunchers. They both had short arms. He reminds me of Edwin Rosario a little bit.
Yeah, he does. He does. You know, you're going way back in the archive. No, but yeah, no, he does. The thing I'll say about Danny is I don't think he gets enough credit. You know, I really don't, because those two, look, there are a lot of people who think he lost to Mauricio Herrera. So, and that was a close fight that could have gone either way. Mm-hmm. That was a blemish on his record that, you know, that wouldn't look good. But I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. You know, I think, you know, to have just those two close losses on his record to elite level fighters like Keith Thurman and Sean Porter, you know, that speaks to how good he actually is. And another thing that Sean said to me was that he's a guy, when you're watching him, nothing jumps out about him. You don't say, you know, wow, he's got such great footwork or such fast hands or he's a murderous puncher, but he does everything well. And Sean said that when you're on the outside looking in against Danny Garcia, he said, trust me, it is a lot more difficult when you're in there and he's standing across from you.
Yes.
That Errol Spence is going to find that out to some degree tomorrow night. And I don't think Errol has underestimated him in any way. I think he realizes how good Danny Garcia is, and that's why he picked him for this fight. You know, he could have, coming off that horrific car accident, Ron, he could have fought anybody at the back end of the top 15 and made an optional title defense of his IBF or WBC title, and no one could have complained. I mean, you have to see where you're at. I mean, after something like that, you know, how do you take a punch under the bright lights when you're wearing 8-ounce gloves and you're not wearing headgear and you're really getting hit for the first time under those circumstances since the accident? There's a lot to find out tomorrow night. And Errol Spence said, look, I don't want a tune-up. I don't want an optional title defense against someone no one's ever heard of. Bring me Danny Garcia, just like I was supposed to fight when the accident happened next. Bring it on. And he deserves a lot of credit for that, I think.
You know what advantage that Spence has? I think he could use – this is what I love about Spence. He's very good at using he's a big welterweight, so he's very good at that jab to the body, and he's very good at controlling the distance, then coming in with his hard shot. And his right cross is underrated because I saw him put a lot of guys on the canvas. Now, he's a left-hander, southpaw, but his right cross is lethal.
It is. Ron, I'll say one thing, though. When he goes to the body, when he's really digging to the body, he tends to lean in a little bit. Like
yes.
He's in, and he exposes himself to get countered. Now, if he makes that mistake against Danny Garcia, he could wind up paying for it because, again, he's a guy who wants to – in his heart, he's a fighter. He's from Texas. I mean, he wants to bang it out with you. He's got dog in him, and I mean that in the most complimentary way.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to fight, and he doesn't – you know, he's not going to be satisfied going in there tomorrow night, even though he knows it's the right thing and the smart thing to do. He's not going to be satisfied going into that ring and outboxing Danny Garcia for 12 rounds and making it seem like he didn't want to engage with him. There are going to be times when he's going to stand and trade with Danny Garcia, and that's what Garcia needs to have a chance to win this fight because he's probably not outpointing Errol Spence. That's his least likely path to victory, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
He needs him to stand there and give him opportunities to counter him. And I think Spence will do that at times, and that's when we're going to have some really interesting moments in the fight.
You know why I think it's going to be real interesting moments? Danny Garcia, ever since he lost the decision to Thurman and Porter, he has the mindset of, I don't really want this to go to the scorecard. Let me try to put him on the canvas and get him out. And you know that Errol Spence is a predator. So that's what's going to make for a great fight. Neither of these guys really want to go to the scorecards.
And they both have great chins. That's
yeah.
really fascinating about this because they both can punch. They both have, I mean, you know, it did seem to me like Danny got buzzed, and he did. And the first round of the fight against Keith Thurman, a combination, I think it was a left hook that he followed up with a right hand. And Danny was holding. I mean, I think he was buzzed a little bit at that point. But throughout his career. I mean, he's fought some big punchers and has never really been any worse for wear from it. So he's got a great chin. Errol has always shown a great chin. Sean Porter, again, told me he didn't think he really hurt either guy. I mean, he said he thought he hit Danny with a body shot, maybe that
I saw that. I watched it today. Yes.
But beyond that, up top, he didn't hurt him, and he didn't think that he really hurt Errol either. So both guys with well above average power, granite chins, a lot to prove. Because, Ron, people are saying that, there's clearly a lot to prove for Errol Spence tomorrow night, that he's the same that he was before the accident. But this is a moment of truth, so to speak, for Danny Garcia also, because this would be, look, people will always look back on the Matisse win as a career-changing win for him. It was a fight that people thought he was going to get knocked out in, and it changed the course of his career, no doubt about that. But if he beats Errol Spence, there obviously will be people who say, oh, he wasn't the same after the accident. That's the only reason Danny won. Not fair, but that's reality. That's what will happen if he wins the fight. But it would be the biggest win of his career.
Yeah. But you know what? I want to see if I could delve into the mind of Kieth Idec. For the first couple rounds, aren't you going to be wondering if Errol Spence gets cut from the accident, does the cut get worse because of the scar tissue? Aren't you thinking about that?
I looked at I was face-to-face with him. Now, obviously, we're wearing masks and everything down here. But I've been face-to-face with him several times over the last couple of days. We all eat in the same – they have this bubble environment down here where we all kind of eat in the same places and everything. So I've seen Errol in the dining room, in the elevator a couple – so I've seen him face-to-face like a few times this week. And I was kind of looking at his face, and I was like, his face actually looks pretty good based on the photos that I saw from right after the accident. It didn't look to me like there was a lot of scar tissue there. And he had some plastic surgery, I guess, to tighten some of that up. But it doesn't look like there's anything there that would be susceptible to cuts. What I'm more interested in, Ron, and you make a good point. I mean, because his skin was pretty ripped up there. There's several cuts on his face and everything. So that's a possibility, I guess. But what I'm more interested in the first couple of rounds of the fight is when Danny catches him with a clean shot. Clean shot. How does he react? Because there's a distinct difference between when you're sparring with heavier, with 16-ounce gloves or whatever, and headgear, and you're fighting a much lesser fighter than Danny Garcia. That's very different than getting clipped in a real fight in a stadium setting. I think there will be about 20,000 people in the event tomorrow because they have limited capacity with COVID-19 and everything. But the bright lights will be on, and 8-ounce gloves, no headgear. How does he react when he gets clipped with that first shot? And I think even in his own mind, even though he's not going to say that, he's waiting for that too. He wants to see how he reacts physically to that as well.
Finally, who do you think is going to win this fight?
I think Errol Spence is going to win a 12-round unanimous decision in a competitive fight. I don't think it'll be something where necessarily you might think it would go either way. But I think he'll win a unanimous decision because I do think, while what I alluded to before, he will fight at times. I think mostly he's going to approach this fight the way he approached the Mikey Garcia fight, in a smart way, in a more tactical way. That's the easiest way that he can win the fight. And in this one, I think he knows he needs to win just to get past that, not only the physical hurdle, but the mental hurdle of what awaits him tomorrow night.
Thanks a lot, man. You're the best.